Welcome to today's Explainer. We're stepping right into a genuinely haunting dark fantasy narrative today, venturing deep into the rain-slicked alleys of a place simply known as the Mirrors in the Mud. We are going to explore a deeply fascinating, honestly pretty grim cosmic divide between two very different architects of the soul. It's a dark narrative that forces us to look really closely at exactly how we build our own foundations.
To even begin to grasp the treacherous path ahead of us, we have to contemplate one core cosmic truth, the three parables of the fire and the frost. This isn't just some story about magical elements, right? It's a chilling look at creation, destruction, and the incredibly subtle traps laid out for the human psyche. So let's dive right into this. Parable I, Forge of the Red Specter.
So back in the First Age, the Red Specter originally stood as this purely nihilistic executioner. He basically viewed all of existence as just a meaningless error that needed to be completely erased. But he actually underwent this profound alchemical transmutation. He transformed from a simple executioner into the true creator, the ultimate guardian of authentic values. Instead of wanting to just wipe the slate blank, he started carrying the fire of imagination, actively seeking to transform a flawed world.
And how does he do this? Well, it all comes down to his method, defined by the logic of the crucible. As the architect of the soul's new foundation, the Spectre doesn't just watch from the sidelines. He takes the dull lead of the old world, that heavy, lifeless weight of history, and he absolutely melts it down in this fiery process. From that intense, molten heat, he forges the steel of a completely new, life-affirming mythos. It's painful, for sure, but it fosters this relentless spirit of the coming.
Moving on to Parable 2, The Deceptive Guide's Illusion.
Now our narrative takes a massive shift. We leave the heat of the fiery forge and enter the cold shadows of the gilded cages, where we meet a very different kind of architect, the Deceptive Guide. He waits in the dark, mimicking the actual movements of creation, using these flickering masks of progress. Imagine this figure whispering from the shadows, "I offer you sovereign laws and perfected evolution. Just sign here." But it's a trap. His promises of progress are entirely fake.
It's a grand, tragic irony, really, because those sovereign laws he's selling you, they're literally just contracts written in disappearing ink. Instead of melting the past to create something genuinely new like the Red Spectre does, the guide builds his whole domain upon the dust of the old world. He uses the twisted roots of historical shadows to build this rigid illusion, all designed to trap the seeker who's desperately looking for evolution. And the exact mechanism he uses to trap his followers is just insidious. They're called Apollinean gaskets. Now, these aren't physical chains you can see or break. Think of them as intricate structures of rigid, totally frozen logic. They are the ultimate weapon, designed to permanently bind the fluid spirit of the seeker. The guide uses this frozen logic to assert absolute control, all while falsely promising you're on a journey forward.
When you see how this trap unfolds step by step, the true horror really clicks. First, he hooks the seeker with that shiny promise of evolution. Second, he slowly, quietly binds their fluid spirit with those rigid Apollinean gaskets. And finally, step 3, he secretly pulls the psyche back into total static stagnation. It's a complete, tragic loss of individuality. He leads the soul not to a new beginning, but directly toward the mirrors of the hollow souls.
Which brings us to our final act. Parable 3, The Monument's Frozen Tomb.
We are now in the final darkness of what the lore calls the Great Evening, where the deceptive guide drops his masks and reveals his true identity, the Monument of the Void. The contrast between our two architects couldn't be more absolute. The true Spectre is dynamic. He wields fire to fundamentally change the nature of the metal itself. But the Monument? He's just a ghostly, static entity, acting with the clinical detachment of the last thinker. He doesn't transform anything. He merely rearranges the dull lead of history into a more pleasing shape to look at.
You might be wondering, why go through all this trouble just to fake creation? Well, the monument creates this illusion of a perfected universe to hide a deep, hollow fear of the end. His rigid logic and structured laws aren't about progress at all. They are literally just an elaborate disguise for a tomb of one's own making.
And here is where we see the ultimate, tragic loss of individuality. Because to maintain this frozen order, the monument demands the ultimate price, the complete erasure of the self. Followers cease to grow entirely. They just decay into what the text brilliantly calls a pious cow of contentment, completely mistaking the dead silence of their gilded cage for the vast, true peace of the stars.
Which leaves us with one incredibly chilling final thought. As you stand at the cosmic divide between the fire of creation and the frost of stagnation, you really have to ask yourself, will you burn in the crucible of your own becoming, facing the terrifying heat of true transformation, or will you surrender to the deceptive guide and find fake peace in a tomb of your own making? It's a heavy choice to ponder. Thank you for joining me on this explainer. I hope this breakdown helped illuminate these incredibly dark yet fascinating concepts.